It's the SDG podcast. Today is January 5th, 2021. And we're here with the podcasters, Peter Lawrence from our Microsoft practice, Chad Juttner from our Java practice, and Jason Scherschlight from our relatively new product practice. Today, we're going to talk to Jason about the product mindset. I'm Kyle Bacher, the SDG IT department. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle. Hey,
I didn't give you a chance to say your names or to say hi when I just blazed right through it. So, Peter, why don't you let us know who you are?
Peter Lawrence, right here.
And we got Chad.
Chad Juttner, right here. I suppose the listeners can't hear me waving. I'll stop that.
If they're watching the video, they can. They can hear you.
Excellent. And I'm Jason Scherschlight here, product strategy experience consultant for SDG.
Excellent. So, Jason, what is the product mindset?
Oh, what isn't the product mindset, Kyle? The product mindset, it's an approach to building technology that starts with the understanding that what you're making are products. And so to think about what the product mindset is, I like to also think about a definition of what a product is. It's a response to a human need that a person might have that delivers benefit to that person and then also confers benefit to you who provides it. And then the product mindset is a whole set of behaviors, processes, ways of working that are designed to optimize an organization's ability to deliver great products.
So it doesn't have to be like a thing. It doesn't have to be like an application. It can be like a service.
Certainly. Yeah, that's a great distinction too, especially for organizations, maybe with a long history, maybe with a pre-digital history. You know, you made dog food, you made lawnmowers, physical things made out of atoms and material. Those, the products there are fairly obvious, but those companies, as they shift to becoming digital companies, will also build digital products like, how do I purchase this thing? How do I configure this lawnmower? Maybe there's communities where service can happen. Maybe there are services for, design your own dog food that might be helpful. All of these things are also products and should be treated as such. That is, people use them, they use them to accomplish a purpose, and they have ways of measuring their success and then delivering value to the customer, and then in turn delivering value to the provider.
So that's a nice twist. And when you started talking about products and dog food and things like that, I'm like, oh yeah. But then you spun it around and like, hey, a website to buy dog food is also a product. That's a nice switch in mindset, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a challenge for organizations to start making that shift. But it's pretty important for them to do. And that doesn't mean they don't also need to manage their physical products as well. Sure. I think often of, a coffee shop. What's the product that Starbucks offers? Well, Starbucks offers coffee, and they've got people who are experts in beans and roasts and, Colombian coffees versus Ethiopian coffees. But they also have people who are experts in, and part of the experience is, especially when we're not in a pandemic, they've got people who are experts in the physical environment in which the coffee is served and delivered. They pay a lot of attention to their furniture, to their ordering processes, to the music, to lighting, to signage. That's all managed as a product. And then certainly there are digital products, an ability to order my product, my coffee online, pick it up with, a very simple interaction. That's all a product as well. Again, it all works together. So certainly Starbucks has people who manage the physical products, but they also have people who manage the digital products and the environment in which it's served.
So that's like an external facing thing, as an offering to the public. But say as an IT department, working with an organization, you have internal products as well.
Yeah.
And would you also shift to the product mindset for like internal IT?
Yeah, certainly. Again, every bit of software, maybe not there, we might find some exceptions, but software has users, and users have needs, and they have a reason they need to accomplish something. And maybe it's, internal productivity or internal transactions, et cetera. And those needs can be optimized with a well-designed product, a well-delivered product. So prioritization, design, measuring of value, understanding if we're working on the right thing or not, on accountability to goals, all of that is part of the product mindset, and certainly can apply to internal products as well as those that you deliver to your external customers.
Yeah, because I think we're used to projects.
Yeah.
As in IT and as developers, it's got a start date, it's got an end date, and when you deliver, you hit all your deliverables, you drop the mic, walk out the door, to the applause and all that, and the curtain closes, and you're done. You're right off into the sunset.
I think Kyle works in a different IT area than I'm familiar with.
All requirements met, you're under budget, on time, et cetera.
When you add
Kyle's been involved in all of my projects.
It helps. You feel good about stuff. But then that system or service or whatever it is, that thing has to be maintained. And the user interaction is still important after the fact. So
yeah, and I think
that?
When I think about, so you talk about IT projects, and certainly those are an important structure and they aren't going away. And I don't want to really say that there's sort of projects versus products, like they're in opposition to each other. But a project kind of approach, as you've described, says that success is, did we meet all the requirements? Are we on budget? Did we meet our timelines, et cetera, as you just described? And doing all that doesn't actually tell me what I've done for the market or what I've done for the business. We might think that what we call requirements are the things that are necessary, but maybe it turns out that's not what the market actually wanted. So a product mindset says, instead of measuring your success by, did we finish this thing on time and on budget and meeting all the requirements? Instead, it says, are we delighting the user, and are we doing it relentlessly? One little mantra I use a lot is that you manage a project to end, as you described, Kyle, but you manage a product to endure. You kind of don't want it to end. You want to keep delivering value and understanding what you need to do next. So again, this is sort of a shift in mindset. Projects are important. Projects might help you better build a product, but that product mindset says, we're not building this thing to come to an end. What we're doing is trying to build something that we can keep delivering value through.
Jason, I had a question. So as developers, so Peter and I are developers. What types of behaviors should we, how should we approach a project that is coming into it with a product mindset? What are the types of things that we should be doing differently or be more aware of in those types of opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chad. I love when developers recognize the value of building empathy for the users themselves, of understanding the user problems they're trying to solve. So rather than saying, I'm an engineer who's great at building stuff and hand me the thing that you want me to build and I'll build it, instead, hand me the problem you want me to solve or expose me to the human beings who have the problem and let me observe them a bit as well. Certainly, user experience design, market research, these are all important disciplines as well. But I love when an engineer starts to get involved in seeing the product be experienced or experience the context in which the users are going to use the product, because then you'll start to understand the problems you might be forcing them to experience through something that you thought was a pretty reasonable way to do something, but they're in a weird context, so maybe it wasn't the great solution. So some of these behaviors about getting out of the building yourselves, exposing yourselves to the problems, and really getting crisp on what the problem is rather than I can just solve the thing that I've been told to, or I can just make the thing I've been told to make.
Right.
Does that answer the question, Chad?
I think so. Yeah.
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 Good.
Yeah, back in my consulting days, way back in 2019, I did
A long time ago.
Wow.
work with Microsoft 365 and SharePoint, and doing intranets and content management and things like that. And I would talk to my clients about this is an ongoing service we're providing as an IT department. This needs to be, because we're not going to drop this thing on people day one and have it perform the way we want and have the content in there the way we want it to. And we need that user involvement. And I always had issues when I was seen as like the master builder and kept away from the users. There was a layer of BAs and PMs in there. And then they would come back to me with their requirements, and it was always difficult for me to translate that into building something that was effective. It was much easier for me to be in the room and to be able to ask certain questions, and especially when you're working with a platform that it's more configuring than developing. Because then it's like, well, this isn't going to work exactly the way you're describing, but we can still solve that problem another way.
Yeah, so you can kind of work through it directly with the user then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about. Sort of trying to limit that mediation between you as a maker and the user as a user, so that you can kind of directly see what's happening. I think often too people think, and maybe not developers themselves, but manager types and people building budgets who are concerned with things like, well, are we efficiently using our time, or why are we sending these software engineers to go talk to our users? Shouldn't they be heads down coding? But in fact, I think you gain a lot of efficiency just by exposing developers to the problem more directly, because you're going to end up making a better product and not wasting time later refactoring and refiguring.
So, Jason, you bring up some good points. Some of the challenges of getting that product mindset into a space or a company that you're working with. Are there any other challenges? Like, what are the big challenges that really stop or make it difficult to get this in the door?
Yeah, one, and you guys kind of touched on it with some of your questions, and even Kyle, your anecdote, is the way resources are sort of allocated and funded. You'll see that happens in, often sort of large time frames, something like an annual planning process where people are competing for which project's going to get prioritized. And then people are asked, well, to make the case for your project to be prioritized, we need you to build some pretty detailed estimates. And then in order to build those estimates, we need to get really crisp on the detailed requirements. You start backing yourself into this project thing where what you're beholden to then is the stuff that we talked about, your budget, your requirements, your timelines. And the whole organization is designed to do that, rather than say, we know that this is an area of opportunity and we want to fund that opportunity, and we want to fund the team to go kind of figure out that opportunity and to be sort of reacting along the way and learning and maybe making smart decisions, like that thing we thought was going to matter to the market, actually they don't care about. So let's not do that. Let's instead use those resources in other ways. I guess the way I'm reacting here, Peter, is that this sort of funding and budget cycles, which often happen through a whole different set of processes than the actual technology development stuff, sometimes can be a little bit at odds with the product mindset and be a little bit of a challenge for teams.
Do you try to bring on small teams into this mindset first and let it grow organically, kind of in the agile process sort of?
Yeah, that's a great way to approach it. And in fact, I don't mean this to sound like I'm suggesting that, product managers and technology leaders should just ignore the directives they've been given by executives. But you can also do things like translate the thing that was prioritized into a set of problems to be solved. If someone says, we need you to go build a such and such system, and this is exactly what we want it to be, you can say, great, I see that you want us to build that system because it's going to solve this problem, we think. So what we're going to do is solve that problem because that's what you've prioritized, and we're going to figure out the best way to do it, and sort of force the product mindset into the conversation that way. And then, just as you described, Peter, start working in agile, iterative ways to discover what the right solution is there, whether there is a solution there, whether it's producing value, and be communicative all along the way. And I think you'll find some success.
Nice.
So is there like a special skill set? You know, it's easy. You know, I could listen to TED Talks all day long. And during that TED Talk, I'm tracking right along with it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get this. I get that. I understand that. And then after it, if I try to convert that into actually doing it, I can't. You know, it's like there's that disconnect. What kind of, I guess, experience or skill set do you need to kind of deliver a product mindset or shift an organization to a product mindset?
Yeah, so a variety of kind of technical roles can make good product managers and product leaders. Software engineers can become good product leaders. I think user experience design, in fact, there's so much overlap between user experience design and product management that those disciplines are increasingly converging. Product management, maybe with a little sort of comes from a business perspective. User experience design comes from maybe a bit more of a kind of aesthetic perspective. But they overlap really at the spot where the user has a problem. So I think user experience design is a great background. I also think, and some of this is my own personal bias, that sort of broad-minded liberal arts type of people who are good sort of empathetic, good writers. I think musicians and poets and playwrights make great product people too, and you can end up building some really great products with some of those sorts of skills.
Hippies. I think you just described hippies. Is that
just described hippies? Yep.
okay?
All right. So, we're going to need a poet on our project.
You do.
The product owner, Moonbeam.
This is mine. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Philosophers and poets make great product managers. I mean, Stuart Butterfield of Slack, who just sold his company for $1 gazillion, he was a philosophy major. You know, these are good stories. So
I've worked with a lot of music majors.
Yeah.
There is a correlation between developers and music and musicians, kind of the same types of kind of wiring in the brain.
Yeah, no, I believe
both.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's a sort of artificial dichotomy between like hard sciences and engineering and, you know, more sort of creative, empathetic disciplines. And in fact, that line just doesn't exist, I think. Good artists make good engineers make good artists, etc.
It's like you have to kind of have a feel for it.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask, so like a product manager or a product strategist, like what is their day-to-day role in the life cycle of like a project? You know, like what are some of the, like the daily activities and some of the deliverables that come out of these guys' work? And I'm asking because I'm starting a new project right now, and they're coming at it with specifically said the product mindset. So the concept isn't necessarily new to me because, spoiler alert, I used to work with Jason prior to SDG, but so I'm familiar with kind of the way these things work. I'm just kind of wondering how it's evolved over the last decade since we've last, worked together in that setting.
Yeah, so there's kind of different levels of resolution that a product person might work in, and maybe depending on kind of the role you're at, depends on whether you're going to be at a more kind of tactical day-to-day level or a broader sort of strategic level. But you'll sort of, as a product person, cross from working on things like key themes of the product, understanding, product vision and where we want to go, and writing some of that stuff out and getting clear with it. A product person will will be sort of the translator of the market to the users, to the engineers. So a good product person is also spending a considerable amount of time understanding their users, and that might be through things like one-on-one interviews, market research, doing stuff like combing through support tickets and trying to understand where users are having problems. Then as you get into more tactical stuff, you get into things like prioritization. Why is it that we're working on this next? Playing product owner type roles on a Scrum team. I don't mean product owner as a job title there. I mean it as a role on a team where you're starting to represent and saying for the next sprint, we should be working on this sort of thing, and here's why. And then thinking a little bit further out, what are we going to be working on the next sprints? What's our next release? Obviously, with decreasing levels of fidelity, the further out you get. So strategy and vision, working with users, prioritization, measurement is another key one. Measurement of how well this is starting to advance is it solving the problem we thought it should? Is it, creating the opportunities we thought it should? If not, why? So good in measurement, and then communications would be another one. A product manager is often in the seat where they're communicating with stakeholders, communicating with engineers, communicating with marketing teams, communicating even with customers in some cases, helping sales understand a product, serving as kind of a sales engineer type role. So that, I think I just described about 6 families of types of work. And again, some of it's at sort of the day-to-day tactical level, and some of it's going to be at a broader level.
All right.
Cool. I love talking about this stuff with you guys.
I like when I ask you, kind of a leading question, and then,
I just start rambling.
He's halfway through his answer. That's what
Right. I'm gesturing, and here we are all, in this pandemic time, working in our basements and things, and I'm trying to read the room and see if you guys are laughing at my hilarious jokes. That's some of those sort of important things too.
Yeah. I'm laughing on the inside. And I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, nobody can keep up with, the professional comedian in our midst, Jetner.
Retired.
So, how hard of a sell is shifting to the product mindset for an organization? It's some believers in IT and other areas, maybe in the business. Is it when that goes up to the project sponsor level or the executive level? Is it how would you sell that? How would you approach that and convincing them that it's the right way to go?
So one thing is I actually do think it's becoming a little easier, just because I think as a discipline, even as just sort of jargon and buzzword, you hear it so much more now than you did. I mean, 20 years ago, I had a broad job title of product manager and senior product manager for a major local news website, StarTribune.com. Which you've probably heard of. But it was sort of what's that job? You're the product manager? And I'm like, yeah, what I'm going to do is help us figure out how to build this section of our website to do it. And you had to sort of tell the story in a way that I don't think you do as much now. With that said, any of it, the way to sell any of it is to connect it back to value. This is the product is the way that the organization puts its mission into the world, that carries its value proposition into its customers. That's through the stuff that you make. And that should be producing value. I mean, ideally, I've never quite seen it work like this, but ideally, your funders and investors and purse string holders are saying, please, can we give you more money because everything you do returns, double of what we give you. So if you can just keep sort of positioning this as a way of accelerating an organization's delivery of value because you understand the market better, you're able to be a little more nimble and agile and respond to what the market needs, and really, respond to them in a great way that's going to deliver value to the customers and keep them coming back. And then that results in all sorts of great business metrics like new sales and retention and customer growth and customer satisfaction and that stuff. And that then just turns around and equals generally things like revenue and competitive advantage and profitability to the business, that's just a wonderful place to be in. So it works best when you position it that way.
Sure,
How can
it's
we
easy to sell, right?
Yeah, that's my point, is then it's not, we want to overload this thing with, people who are just going to be here to talk about stuff and we don't see the output. Instead, it's what we want to do is make sure that we're using the makers well to deliver the things that are going to be valuable to the market. And there's a set of skills. And again, that's why I say it's great when the developers themselves, when the BAs and QA and everyone themselves, it's not just one person's role. It's instead this team's mindset that says, we're here to solve problems. We're a product team. We're going to put our skills together, and we're going to do that to solve these problems for the user. And I love it when a team has this sense of, we were talking before we hopped on here about, the Minnesota Vikings and an NFL team, and they've got skills like, well, the Vikings lacked this skill, but like a place kicker who is an entirely different person. And the Vikings had a very particular problem with that one this year. But that's a different set of skills than the left tackle, which is also an area where they struggle. But there's these, different sort of talents, backgrounds, approaches, et cetera, but you need both of them to have a good team. So I love when a team isn't, we're all the left tackles and that's my team. It's instead, we're the team of the variety of sets of skills that are necessary to win the market and delight the user, et cetera. So,
and it almost sounds like there's no place in an organization that shouldn't adopt a product mindset, right? I mean, if you're really going out, like even parking lots, you're going to go out to try to make a better parking experience, right, for the end user who's doing the parking, which, yeah, it's a little bit stretched, but still, it's, everything can have that mindset and be adopted that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, in general, again, as a product guy, as a guy who's, built a long career in product strategy, I say, yes, that's great. Let's use it all over the place. I will add that there might be certain types of things that have become optimized, and you really are going to win by, squeezing that last bit of inefficiency out of some kind of commodity or something, just depending on what your business is. So maybe there's, some contexts in which an approach really should be get this stupid thing done as quickly as you can. We've already figured out forever exactly what it is the user needs, and there's no room for disruption. But with all that said, the world's constantly changing. Human expectations are constantly changing. Something that delighted a customer a year ago might disappoint them now just because technology has changed the way they expect things to work. So even in
buggy whips of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't go out there
if you thought we're always going to need to whip our buggy or our horse to pull our buggy or whatever it is. I think I understand the function of a buggy whip. Really, what we need to do is get from here to
rotary
there faster.
phone, maybe something more archaic. I don't know.
Yeah, but the expectations change all the time.
Right. Right.
Actually, a great example of that is a mobile device. Back in our younger days, if you had said, this bank is going to let you check your account balance through this glowing lozenge you keep in your pocket, you would have thought that's the most amazing thing in the world. And now you just think you're disappointed if you can't. Can you imagine a bank that doesn't even let me check my balance over the mobile device?
Right. Why can't I?
Yeah, why can't I? So again, stuff just tends to fall from, woohoo, that's amazing, to, yep, I just expect that. And ultimately, I'm disappointed if you don't do that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we see that even in physical products. When I was a kid, I remember things like my parents, Plymouth Volare wagon, and you'd crank down the windows, and power windows were the thing for my grandpa's Cadillac. That was really high class stuff. And now I don't know the last time I heard of a car where to roll down the windows, I had to hand crank the thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that humans lose their sense of wonder so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing the stuff that we can do. I mean, right now we're sitting here using this Zoom session or this team session and having this conversation, and we're recording it with these devices, and we're going to send it out into the world. It's an amazing thing, and we should just continue to keep some of that wonder and delight.
We're all in different corners and everything.
Yeah, totally.
If the pandemic had hit even a year earlier, it would have been a whole different story. There was a lot that happened with like Teams and other online meeting tools in just that, in just 2019.
Yeah.
That improved them, and a lot of infrastructure upgrades and things like that, it just made a huge difference in our ability to work remotely and collaborate remotely.
Yeah.
I heard one of the CTO from Zoom talk. So you talked about last year. If the pandemic had hit a decade ago, without the ability of AWS to spin up new infrastructure, like snapping your fingers, he said at the beginning of the pandemic in March, they were adding, 3,000 servers, 2,000 or 3,000 EC2 instances a day to their infrastructure to satisfy the demand that they went through. And that's a great point. Yeah, if you did that, if you didn't have the ability in AWS, if you didn't have Kubernetes to model all of that, all of these technologies that just so happen to be there today are making everything that we're experiencing right now so much more, I will say, palatable to a degree than if this had happened, even 2005, 2010.
Totally. Yeah, people would have been like, we have to buy more servers and expand our data center and wire every company would have been freaking out about that.
We have to hire a crew of guys to lift and move these things over here.
Right.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, the cloud is just amazing. And again, I think this is all related to the product mindset, even that sense of kind of possibility and wonder and figuring out what people need and figuring out ways to delight them is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, just the number of videos you can display on a call was a huge deal. That's early on we used Zoom instead of Teams, because you could only display 4 or 6 video feeds on a screen. And that was the big complaint. And Microsoft caught up with that pretty quickly. And then we've been on kind of Teams ever since. Just that small thing, just that one delighter prevented people from making that shift.
It's a big shift, right? Like 4 to 9 is a huge difference to the individual human watching people, right? You want to see everybody that you're in the meeting with, not just who's talking now.
There was an Onion article about a Zoom meeting, and the one guy that didn't have his camera on, I think the headline was something along the lines of entire team wondering what carnival of mysteries is occurring behind this guy's laptop that he doesn't want us to see.
I was at a call yesterday.
It's just amazing.
Sorry to interrupt, Chad. I was on a call yesterday, and I was eating, so I had I was eating my lunch, so I had my video turned off, and then I had to interject something, so I texted it, and then there was some follow-up questions, and I had like a mouthful of noodles, and there was some disappointment that I wasn't turning on my camera and speaking, and I was like, well, I didn't say anything. I just kind of let it go, but I need to circle back and make some apologies now. But that's such a different shift. 2 years ago, I tried to get some people to do video calls, and they just wouldn't do it. They didn't want to be on video. Right. And now it's like, it's expected. If you're not on video, then what are you up to?
I think it's a cultural thing, depending on from company to company. I'm on a project now, and the cameras on culture really hasn't shifted there yet. It's still the carnival of mysteries. You know, we don't know what's going on, but I think slowly everybody everybody kind of shifts to let's turn our cameras on and actually see each other.
Yeah, so much is driven by need and by convenience. And, you know, I did some work a long time ago for a zoo. And it was a really, really big zoo in California. And they worked via WebEx, because walking across the zoo grounds to get to a conference room, you know, was a half an hour endeavor. Or having to supply golf carts to everybody and things like that. So they became a remote work source, even though they all worked at the same place.
At the same facility. Interesting. Yeah. Huh.
So kind of shifting back to the product mindset discussion we were initially having. So Jason, when companies take this on, for the I'm assuming there's situations where it's a new concept to some folks, or maybe it's not anymore. You know, it seems like it's been around a lot, but like, how does it? How should I ask this right? How does it go wrong? Like, what are the mistakes people make on this journey, and like, how do they? Have you seen that, and have you seen them correct, or do these product mindsets turn just into products again? And you know, we're gonna finish the project. Everybody's gonna disperse. We're gonna send support over here. Have a nice day.
Yeah, I mean, you just described it. I think where it goes wrong is when there isn't enough sort of room for discovering the solution, you know, what the right product is, where there's an expectation that we know what it is that the user needs, and we've defined that really well up front, versus allowing time for, you know, and this is work. I mean, this requires stuff to be made, like a prototype that gets reacted to and then gets changed, and that people expect that it's going to change. It's that sense. I mean, the word requirement I bristle at, because it sounds like you know exactly what it is that's necessary. This thing is required. When in fact,
make everybody happy.
Yeah. Yeah, when in fact you don't know if it's required. It should be called a guess. You know, it's a prediction, maybe something like that. But you don't know for certain that that's the thing that's going to solve the problem. So it's, I think, getting sort of overloaded up front with thinking we know what it is they need. And then trying to kind of get wrapped up too much in estimates. Another problem that happens a lot, a guy I've done some product work with describes it as playing Tetris with your teams, where you try to, if you can picture the game Tetris in these different shapes, and you try to pack everything in, and you sit there beforehand and you say, we can get this thing delivered if everything exactly fits and we don't have any kind of weird rooms. But we all know, playing Tetris, oh man, this shape came, which isn't the one I wanted or one expected, and suddenly things get out of shape a little bit and you've got this gap in there. So you shouldn't sit there and try to construct your entire estimating and planning based on this assumption that you're going to be able to use there's switching costs, there's somebody leaves, there's unknowns. They just happen all the time. So you need to account for that stuff in some of your planning. And again, that's a risk that I think a trap people fall into.
Are there milestones that, as you're switching over from a project to a product mindset, that you can kind of hit, or maybe stick and stay with and then jump forward from there?
Yeah. If you get everybody kind of clear on what the value proposition is, if you then, and I'm not suggesting we're just haphazardly building stuff. I mean, there's a lot of work that happens to get clear on a value proposition, break that value proposition into key themes, ideally starting to build some kind of a measurement framework then that says we're going to be able to measure, and it's not a business metric like customer satisfaction, it's more a measurement that can serve as sort of a proxy for business success. We know that when, X number of people put more than 3 items in their cart, I'm making this up, and then check out within 20 minutes, that they're going to be repeat customers. So let's start worrying about like cart filling, or I'm making this example up. And those are metrics that teams can start to latch onto. If you can, become a stronger team, because everybody's clear on the value proposition, become a stronger team, because our teams are organized to pursue problems rather than just, fulfill requirements. Become a stronger team because we've now got a metrics framework in place, and we're starting to drive that.
Well, even
those are all things.
Metrics would be a big change, right? And probably something that would produce awesome results as you get that feedback loop going, right?
Yeah, and it's a great way to sell the story. Again, we already talked about to sell the story to other stakeholders, upstream, executives, et cetera. Why do we want to make this shift? Because we believe that this is, and we can measure it, and we're going to have, here's a baseline, and we want to prove it. One of the SDG clients I'm working with right now, we've done some good work over the last month or two to start to lay out a vision and kind of key themes and what we're going to work on and what we're not. But our next stage is we really got to get good about measuring it, figuring out what we want to start to drive towards, at least getting a baseline and then organizing teams to produce those.
And that's probably a big shift too, right? The project, you just do the project and it either works or it doesn't, but you don't necessarily know, right? Yeah. At the end of the project is done, but is it successful? It's
you got it. I mean, I almost a joke, but something I ask is, what causes you to put cake in your break room? Do you put cake in the break room and everybody celebrates because you finished the project, or because you reached some outcome or milestone?
Right.
And again, that's part of the shift to the. And again, we want to celebrate successes, and people put in hard work. I'm not saying, and who doesn't love cake? I'm not saying let's not do that, but let's celebrate the things that are producing great outcomes and achievable things, rather than, again, finishing a task that we don't know whether it was me.
Yeah, it's easy to celebrate 1,000 things rather than 1,000 lines of code developed, right? Like, who celebrates that anymore?
Chad does.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you, Peter? It's a lot of code.
Well, okay, any excuse for cake is always a good reason.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's good to see that product and something measurable that you can, and to start measuring it as part of the product mindset, right? To say, this is value. We're knowing we're delivering value as we're delivering the value. Yep. And you get that loop that comes back and says, hey, we're winning.
Yeah, and ideally you get it relatively frequently. It isn't something that you wait a year and discover. It's, this kind of continuous feedback that we're starting to drive the things that we want to drive.
Customers don't like it when our site goes down every week. They've found that to be problematic. We should fix that.
There you go.
Yeah, it was always hard. I've done a lot of intranets and content management systems, and it was always difficult, when they said we need to figure out our ROI. What's the return on our investment here? And it's like, we're not selling products, we're providing a service. So our measurements are how much are people complaining about it versus how much are they using it? Right. And, are we getting positive feedback versus negative feedback? There used to be a lot of, in terms of content management, used to be a lot of talk about, people spend X amount of time looking for stuff. So if we improve your content management, they're going to spend less time.
Right.
But that's not quantifiable. It's like you're not going to stand behind people with a stopwatch.
But you might be able to quantify things like calls into a support line or something like that. And, maybe there's I'm just using your example here, Kyle, and the domain of intranets better than I do. But maybe it's like, there's an HR, benefits hotline, and is there a ratio between percentage of people who filled out all their benefits stuff and the number of calls that had to be made in order to, to a benefits hotline. And if you had a really kind of informative and walked you through the process, the open enrollment process is easy. You could keep the one number, people are still doing what they need to do, and drive down the other number. And maybe you're trying to measure that, frequently. Again, I'm making up the example here, but
having that product mindset, you'd start tracking it and you'd start knowing, right? Otherwise, you'd just be guessing, like, oh, it feels like they call a lot right now.
Yeah.
Well, a lot is a hard number to count.
You'd track it, and you'd also get the team excited to solve that problem or drive that metric. Instead of, again, saying, and here's what we're going to do, we put out this set of requirements, go execute this. What you'd say is, okay, team, our job is to get those calls driven down, but keep the fulfillment of the stuff, steady. So how are we going to do that? And then people would start brainstorming some ideas, maybe you do some quick sketches, they share with some users, people would say, I'd never use that. Okay, crumple it up and throw it away, but we learned something from that. But then you got the team on this kind of mission to solve a problem, build a business. Again, this is just this example of a HR intranet that I'm making up here, but you can see how that would work and get a team motivated to, come up with some creative solutions and things.
Absolutely. And it'd be a great product.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of wrapping up, what are some things that teams or companies can do right now to become more product focused and develop a product mindset?
Yeah, so, I've thought about this. I think a team that can become kind of product-led and product-driven, if it is clear on the vision of what they're trying to do. So teams can just make sure a vision is not just, mission statement, kind of, mumbo jumbo in the clouds, but instead really is driven to the level of the product. What is the purpose of this thing? And has everybody had kind of a hand in shaping what that is, or at least understanding what that is? And can the whole team understand what that is? Has that been broken into a few kind of key constituent themes? So we think we are going to be the best such and such in the world, and we're going to do that by having simplest search. We're going to have, a robust community of fellow users that I have access to, and I'm making this all up again. And we're going to make it the easiest. We want to make it really easy to, execute transactions with a minimum number of steps or something like that. And we know that if we do that, that's going to fulfill our theme of being the easiest whatever in the world to engage with. And everybody's kind of part of that. So getting that vision and mission really just sort of believed in by the entire team is great. Then I think exposing the entire team to the user context, user problem, user domain, as we discussed earlier. I don't think it's inefficient to have engineers at least watch the recording of the usability session if you can't, get out into the wild yourself. Exposing the team to some of these problems, giving the team just access to customers, access to customer data, versus not knowing who it is they're solving problems for. So you got a crisp vision, you've got access to customer data, and then you've got a team with a sense of kind of an identity, diversity of talents, psychological safety as a kind of a key component of a successful team. Google recently did a study on what makes teams successful, and in conjunction with Harvard Business Review. And the two components were diversity, cognitive diversity, and psychological safety. So teams where people are free to kind of question and push back and share their own opinions and ideas without feeling like they're going to get just sort of, no, just do your job. So if a team's got psychological safety and cognitive diversity, access to the market, access to users, a clear sense of what the mission is, I think that team can be pretty successful pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think you really need the team to have a high degree of empathy for the end users and for the business. If you don't feel that pain, if you don't want to solve that problem, I think empathy gives you a really clear mission and kind of a call to arms.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, empathy gives you a clear mission is just a great. Kyle, you've just become a product strategist.
How do I dial that back? It sounds like there's responsibility attached to that, and I don't want.
Kyle, I know we're wrapping up, and since we're talking about our feelings really quick, one quick question for Jason. Will the Vikings kickers ever stop hurting us? Like, ever since Gary Anderson, Blair Walsh, Dan Bailey, is it the purple? Is it like, are goalposts shaped differently? Go ahead, Peter's got a question.
I have a concept.
Okay.
If the offense scores enough points that you don't need to rely on your kicker, you eliminated your kicker problem.
Third most points scored in Vikings history.
In Vikings history, right? Yep.
And we're still.
I think we need to go back. I think kickers, I miss the Fuad Reves, Benny Ricardo, Donald Igwe-Buike.
Give me an Igwe-Buike, yeah. A Fuad or an Igwe-Buike, like anything, absolutely anything. Yeah. I can't take it anymore.
I think we need the kind of colorful, somewhat unathletic from the outside seeming. We need a Zendejas brother. Some of those kickers we used to kick.
I'm hearkening back to that Disney movie with the donkey that was a place kicker.
Oh, Gus the Kicking Mule.
Yeah.
Boyanch.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we'll wrap up.
He was probably, Gus Frerotte, former Vikings quarterback, was probably the second best football player ever named Gus after Gus the Kicking Mule.
There you go.
And there you have it. That's the SDG podcast. If you want to reach out to us, drop us an email at thepodcasters@solutiondesign.com. Until next time, say goodbye, everybody.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Thanks, you guys. I enjoyed it.